Okay, we'll start. Today we are going to discuss about very important topic, postmenopausal bleeding. So it may come as a theory question like define postmenopausal bleeding, describe the causes of postmenopausal bleeding, and discuss the evaluation and management of postmenopausal bleeding. This is how you may get a essay on postmenopausal bleeding. Or in the clinics, you may get a gynec case. You might be able to write the case sheet and also investigations and your plan of management you must be able to write. Okay. So coming to definition of postmenopausal bleeding. Postmenopausal bleeding is defined as any bleeding from the genital tract after 1 year or more years of menopause. Any doubts? Why Shruti has raised her hand? So what is menopause? They are saying that it is after 1 year of menopause, if the woman has any bleeding, then only it has to be called as postmenopausal bleeding. So what is menopause? Menopause is nothing but permanent cessation of menstruation or permanent amenorrhea. So after 1 year of amenorrhea, after the age of 40 years, due to complete cessation of ovarian function resulting in permanent amenorrhea is called as menopause. So menopause is a retrospective diagnosis. A woman after 40 years of age, if she did not get periods for 12 months, then we can say that the woman has reached menopause. So menopause is a retrospective diagnosis made after 12 months of cessation of menstrual cycles. Any bleeding from genital tract after 6 months of amenorrhea in a woman in perimenopausal age group, it also has to be treated as postmenopausal bleeding and investigated. So even after 6 months of amenorrhea, if a woman in perimenopausal age group, that is between 48 to 55 years, if she comes with bleeding, then it must also be considered as postmenopausal bleeding and to be investigated. So what do you mean by perimenopausal period? It is a period of around 3 to 4 years before actual menopause occurs, where there is gradual declining of ovarian function. So during this perimenopausal period, because of decreasing ovarian function, the cycles become irregular, mainly because the cycles become anovulatory and the cycles become irregular and suddenly they will stop. Then age of menarche is, previously we used to consider 48 to 52 years as age of menopause. Nowadays it has they are saying age of menopause, the average is between 50 to 55 years. The average age of menopause is 51.5 years. The menstrual cycles, if they occur even after 52 years, though they are regular and the bleeding is not prolonged or excessive, they must be investigated as postmenopausal bleeding. So a woman who is having regular and normal menstrual cycles even after 52 years must be investigated as postmenopausal bleeding. Nowadays they are saying it is, instead of 52 years, we have to take it 55 years as that one. So age at menarche getting receded because of various changes, the food we are eating and genetic changes, the age at menarche is getting receded. Previously, it is between 12 to 15 years they used to take age at menarche. Now it has receded to 10 to 13 years and the average age at menarche is 10.5 years. And age at menopause is getting advanced. Previously, the woman used to reach menopause by 48 to 50 years like. Nowadays, we see women having regular cycles even after 55 years. So age at menarche is getting receded to 10.5 years. Age at menopause is getting advanced to 51.5 years. So why postmenopausal bleeding must get so much attention? So we say that all cases of postmenopausal bleeding must be investigated and you have to rule out malignancies. This is because malignancies of genital tract is the reason for concern in postmenopausal bleeding, and it needs to be evaluated to rule out malignancy. 90% of the cases of endometrial carcinoma present as postmenopausal bleeding, and 10% of postmenopausal bleeding are due to endometrial cancer and endometrial hyperplasia. So out of 10 cases of postmenopausal bleeding, one will turn up with carcinoma of the endometrium. So all cases of postmenopausal bleeding must be investigated to rule out malignancy. And 20 to 30% of postmenopausal bleeding are due to gynecological malignancy. Not only endometrial carcinoma, it may be due to CA cervix, carcinoma of the vagina, or fallopian tubes, or ovarian malignancy. It may be due to other gynecological malignancies also. Postmenopausal bleeding can occur. So 30 to 40% of endometrial carcinomas, they present as postmenopausal bleeding. The 90% of the cases of endometrial carcinoma, the presenting symptom is postmenopausal bleeding. So coming to causes of postmenopausal bleeding, it can be divided depending upon the organ, starting from vulva, vagina, cervix, uterus, like that. So vulval causes like trauma, vulvitis, benign and malignant lesions of the vulva. Then vaginal causes can be any foreign bodies like ring pessaries. The patient may be having prolapse, UV prolapse for that, and patient not fit for surgery. Ring pessary might have been kept and it is forgotten. Because of that ring pessary, chronic vaginal irritation and maybe vaginal carcinoma, she might be presenting with postmenopausal bleeding. So foreign bodies like ring pessaries, senile vaginitis because of hypoestrogenism, then vaginal benign lesions and malignant tumors, and post-radiation vaginitis. So commonly the woman might have had CAN3 or carcinoma cervix stage 1 or 2. She might have received radiation therapy and goes into menopause, complete cessation of menstruation. Then after 10 years like that, she will come with bleeding PV. So they don't give the history of radiation therapy and all. But when we see, it is post-radiation vaginitis. Then cervical causes like cervical erosion, cervicitis, polyps, decubitus ulcers, cervical malignancies. Uterine causes can be senile endometritis, tuberculous endometritis, endometrial hyperplasia, polyps, endometrial carcinomas, sarcomas, and mixed mesodermal tumors. Then fallopian tube malignancies also can present as postmenopausal bleeding. Ovarian causes like benign tumors like Brenner's tumors, granulosa cell tumor, theca cell tumor, and malignant ovarian tumors. It is also one PG NEET question where what are the ovarian tumors that present as postmenopausal bleeding? They are Brenner's tumors and estrogen secreting ovarian tumors, that is granulosa cell tumor and theca cell tumors. Okay. Then urinary tract lesions like urethral caruncle, papilloma of the bladder, and carcinoma of the bladder. The patient may be actually having bleeding from the urethra, but she may misinterpret as bleeding from the vagina. So you have to rule out the urinary causes also. Then bowel causes like hemorrhoids, fissures, and rectal carcinoma. Then systemic diseases like blood dyscrasias, hypertension, and drugs like anticoagulant drugs, tricyclic antidepressants, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs on prolonged use may cause postmenopausal bleeding. Then indiscriminate and prolonged use of estrogens, tamoxifen, and hormone replacement therapy. These are the causes of postmenopausal bleeding depending upon the structures. Then the causes can be divided as benign causes, malignant causes, infections, and bleeding from urinary tract or anal canal, and irregular intake of HRT and drug induced. Malignancies can be from most common malignancy causing postmenopausal bleeding is carcinoma of the endometrium, and other malignancies like CA cervix, carcinoma of the ovary, carcinoma of the vulva, vagina, sarcoma of the uterus. Then benign causes like endometrial hyperplasia, endometrial polyps, fibroids, and decubitus ulcer. Infections like pyometra, tuberculosis, senile vaginitis, and senile endometritis. Then bleeding from the urinary tract or anal canal, may be misinterpreted as bleeding from vagina, and irregular intake of hormones and hormone replacement therapy. So depending upon the causes, most common causes, depending upon the prevalence of these causes, we can divide the postmenopausal bleeding like this. Atrophic vaginitis is the most common cause of postmenopausal bleeding. So 60 to 80% of the cases of PMB is due to atrophic vaginitis. Then next common cause is estrogen therapy, that is irregular treatment, irregular intake of hormones or HRT, 15 to 25%. Then 2 to 12% are caused by polyps, which may be cervical polyps or uterine polyps. Then endometrial hyperplasia, 5 to 10% of cases. Endometrial cancer in 10%. Then no cause is found, that is idiopathic in 10%. So even with all investigations and examination, in 10% of the cases, we cannot find any cause, that is idiopathic causes. So more common causes of postmenopausal bleeding are atrophic vaginitis, then HRT, senile endometritis, then genital malignancy, endometrial hyperplasia, and sometimes retained intrauterine contraceptive device. Nowadays, the multi-load and Carpati 385A, they are available with a lifespan of around 12 years. So a woman around 38 years or 40 years, instead of going for permanent sterilization by tubectomy, the IUCD might have been inserted and she might have forgotten that. So that may be the cause for postmenopausal bleeding. So less common causes will be uterine polyps, cervical polyps, TB endometritis, urethral caruncle, and decubitus ulcer. So what is the significance of duration and severity of postmenopausal bleeding? So you can see two case scenarios. In case one, a postmenopausal woman with only 2 episodes of just spotting PV. That is, only there is staining of the napkin, or only just she had a very minimal bleeding PV. And another postmenopausal woman had heavy and prolonged bleeding for 15 days or more. In these two cases, who is having severe symptoms and who needs investigations first? Please answer. So one woman is had only spotting PV of minimal bleeding. Another woman had prolonged and excessive vaginal bleeding. Who needs investigations and who is having severe symptoms? You can make a guess. So case 2. But the answer is okay. So answer is there is no association between duration and pattern of bleeding with severity. So both the cases needs evaluation and investigations like same wise. So you might have across in our relatives also, some will say that she had postmenopausal bleeding only for 1 to 2 days, she had spotting, and after that I don't have any symptoms. Even then you advise her to get investigated to rule out malignancy. So another woman may come with continuous and heavy bleeding for more than 15 days like that. Naturally, they will be paid attention and they will go for investigations and treatment. Whereas you don't neglect a spotting PV, because the duration and severity of postmenopausal bleeding, there is no correlation between duration and severity of postmenopausal bleeding with the severity of the disease. So in exams, they will ask you, postmenopausal bleeding is only for 1 day, 2 episodes she had. Are you going to investigate? So you have to investigate like postmenopausal bleeding. So you have to, in the history, you have to take history of hormone replacement therapy. If the woman is receiving sequential hormone replacement therapy, in Western countries, they prefer HRT to be ever feminine. Then they will be taking sequential HRT, that is for monthly, they will take the cycles, tablets in cycle. So any vaginal bleeding other than expected cyclical bleeding must be investigated and managed. So with when they are taking the drugs in sequential manner, after stopping the drugs at the end of that month, she will get withdrawal bleeding, and again she will start another course for the next month. But if she gets any bleeding in between the expected cyclical bleeding, it must also be treated as postmenopausal bleeding and must be investigated and managed. So any history of uses of any tamoxifen. So where do you use this tamoxifen? Where do you use this tamoxifen? Please answer. Make guess. Yes, very good. Carcinoma of the breast. In which type of carcinoma of the breast? Estrogen sensitive. Estrogen sensitive. Because in carcinoma of the breast, after the taking the sample, tissue specimen, they will test for whether it is receptors are present or not. When estrogen receptors are present, they will give tamoxifen lifelong. So a woman with CA breast receiving tamoxifen, she will present with postmenopausal bleeding. Then you should take the history of breast malignancy and uses of this tamoxifen. Very good. So coming to the how to take the history in postmenopausal bleeding. Age at menarche and age at menopause is very important. The women with early menarche and late menopause, they are more prone for, they are high risk group for carcinoma of the endometrium. Then menstrual history, previous menstrual history pattern you have to ask. Number of children, like CA cervix is more common in women with multiparous, and some malignancies are more common in women with less parity. So number of children you have to ask. Then what is the type of deliveries, last childbirth, tubectomized or not. Any history of drug intake like estrogen, tamoxifen, anticoagulants, you have to ask. Then any associated with pain abdomen, mass abdomen, any foul smelling vaginal discharge. Foul smelling vaginal discharge may be present in foreign bodies in the vagina, like forgotten ring pessaries or some foreign bodies. Then urinary and bowel symptoms you have to ask. Any history of fever, loss of weight and loss of appetite. Associated bladder symptoms, bowel symptoms you have to ask. And previous medical and surgical history of uses of tamoxifen, any breast malignancy. Patient might have received treatment for endometrial hyperplasia, or she might have any forgotten IUCDs. In the general and physical examination, you look for anemia, obesity, a BMI more BMI. So obese women with more BMI, diabetes and hypertension, that is corpus cancer syndrome. Because of hyperestrogenism, they will have endometrial hyperplasia and more prone for endometrial carcinoma. Then breast examination is also mandatory. Then in the vitals, you check for blood pressure, because hypertension is the general cause of bleeding, postmenopausal bleeding. Then in the gynecological examination, you have to do parabdominal examination, perspeculum and bimanual examination, and also parrectal examination is also needed. In the parabdomen, you look for any mass, organomegaly, that is hepatosplenomegaly, and ascites, any fluid collection. In the perspeculum examination, you look for any cervical lesions, cervical polyps, carcinoma of the cervix, and atrophic vaginitis. In bimanual examination for uterine size, any adnexial masses and any fixity. So in the general examination, never skip breast examination. In the abdominal examination, you have to look for any organomegaly. Apart from looking for masses in the pelvic masses, you look for any splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, and ascites. This is perspeculum examination, inspecting the cervix for any local lesions, discharge, and also looking at the vaginal wall for any atrophic vaginitis. Then cervical smear and cytology. You have to take and look for cervical cytology. So what are the investigations you are going to do? Complete blood picture. You advise fasting blood sugar and post-lunch blood sugar. You please note down these investigations. So what are the investigations you are going to do in a case of postmenopausal bleeding means you must be able to tell complete blood picture, fasting blood sugar and post-lunch blood sugar, complete urine examination and urine for culture and sensitivity, blood grouping and typing, thyroid profile is also needed. Then cervical cytology by pap smear, any obvious cervical lesion is there. So you see a growth, papillae, that is fungiform growth arising from the cervix. Then you take the biopsy. Then ultrasound examination of the pelvis and also abdomen. In the pelvis, particularly, you ask for endometrial thickness and adnexal masses. In the Doppler flow study, any mass, any growth, adnexal mass is there, any increased diastolic flow and lower resistance index is particularly seen in malignant growth. Then endometrial sampling is mandatory. If there is any ovarian tumors, you can ask for CA-125, tumor marker for epithelial ovarian tumors, and then endometrial hyperplasia is there to rule out cervical endometrial hyperplasia from endometrial polyps. Saline infusion, sonography may be needed. Endometrial sampling can be by conventional DNC, dilatation and curettage, or by fractional curettage, or hysteroscopic guided endometrial biopsy is the gold standard. So under hysteroscopic visualization, we can take the endometrial sampling under vision from the suspected lesions. And CT scan and MRI is needed if early malignant, if you are suspecting any early stages of malignancy. And cystoscopy, proctoscopy may be needed. So this is colposcopy. Have you seen this colposcope anytime in our gynecopy? Have anybody seen this colposcope? No? In gynecopy, there is one room, colposcopy room. So after completing the OP, they will be doing, our PGs will be doing colposcopy. So you please see 1 or 2 cases of colposcopy. So for suspected lesions, cervical lesions, they will do colposcopy, and under colposcopy from the suspected sites, they will take biopsy and send for histopathological examination. What is Willi and what is VIA? VIA and VILI. What is Willi? What is VIA? VIA. Then ultrasound scan, both pelvic scan and abdominal scan may be required, and transvaginal ultrasound is better. And in this, we particularly ask for endometrial thickness. In a postmenopausal woman, the endometrial thickness of more than 4 mm needs further evaluation. Here it is given as 5 mm. Previously, we used to take it 5 mm as the borderline, but now it is only, even if the endometrial thickness is more than 4 mm, it needs further evaluation. That is, it needs endometrial sampling and histopathological examination to rule out endometrial malignancy. So saline infusion sonography to differentiate between polyps and endometrial hyperplasias and any. So in endometrial biopsy, we take a sample from the lining of the uterus. This endometrial sampling can be, we can obtain the sample by Pippelli's endometrial aspirator as an OPD procedure, which I have shown in the last class. This is Pippelli's endometrial aspirator. Other aspirators like Vibras aspirator is available. With this, we can get the sample endometrial aspiration, or conventional dilatation and curettage. So under sedation, we take the scrapings from the endometrial from the uterine canal. Then hysteroscopic guided biopsy under direct visualization, you get the sample from the suspected types. This is how you can get the endometrial sampling. This is Pippelli's aspirator. It is most commonly used, and it does not cause any discomfort to the patient. As a OP procedure, you can do it and send the patient. This is Vibras aspirator. You can see this is Vibras aspirator. So in postmenopausal women where the endometrium is very thin, so with this Pipelis aspirator and Vibras aspirator, the sample may not be sufficient. Then you may need a endometrial brush. You can see it is like a brush. With brush, you introduce it and rotate it 2 to 3 times so that endometrium gets attached to that and we can get the sample for histopathological examination. So endometrial brush also can be used, particularly in postmenopausal women. Whereas in premenopausal or reproductive age group, you can use the Pipelis aspirator and Vibras aspirator. So this is cystoscopic guided endometrial biopsy. Then when patient presents with recurrent attacks of bleeding, so then MRI and you don't find any cause. Patient presenting with recurrent attacks of postmenopausal bleeding and you are not finding any cause, then MRI may be needed to exclude early stages of endometrial carcinoma and cystoscopy may be needed to exclude bladder tumors and sigmoidoscopy to exclude large bowel tumors if the site of the bleeding is not clear. So one case report we will discuss. A 62-year-old postmenopausal woman presenting with intermittent bleeding PV since 2 months. So she is para 3, light 3. She had normal deliveries. Husband died 5 years back and she is not a known case of hypertension and diabetes and no family history of gynecological or bowel malignancies. On general examination, pallor is present, vitals are normal, breast and thyroid is normal, per abdomen is soft, no abnormality detected. External genitalia are atrophic. When can you say that external genitalia are atrophic? There will be graying of the pubic hair and also labia majora and minora are thinned. There is loss of fat. Then you can say that external genitalia are atrophic, which is seen in postmenopausal women because of hypoestrogenism. So on perspicular examination, there is minimal bleeding through os plus and cervix is atrophic and influshed with vagina. So in the postmenopausal woman, the cervix will be atrophied, very small, and the fornices will be lost. The fornices will be very shallow, and then we call it as cervix is atrophic and influshed with vagina. Then vaginal rugosities are lost. The vaginal rugosities lost means it is hypoestrogenism. Then on bimanual examination, uterus is atrophic, that is small, anteverted, mobile, fornices free and no tenderness. On parectal examination, it is normal, no mass is palpable. On investigations, hemoglobin is 9, that is anemic. Vaginal cytology, it is not cervical cytology, you see. It is vaginal cytology showing plenty of RBC, pus cells and parabasal cells and no malignant cells. What is your diagnosis and how will you manage? So what is your diagnosis? 62-year-old postmenopausal woman presenting with bleeding PV since 2 months. Only finding is minimal bleeding through os and vaginal cytology showing plenty of RBC parabasal cells. What is your diagnosis? So the diagnosis is very good. It is atrophic vaginitis. Okay. Why you are saying it is atrophic vaginitis? How will you manage? Okay, it is definitely atrophic. It is definitely atrophic meningitis. How will you manage? Atrophic vaginitis is mainly due. It is because of hypoestrogenism. So local estrogen cream or tablets or pessaries you can keep. With what? Why you came into conclusion that it is atrophic vaginitis? So this is the perspiculum examination in case of atrophic vaginitis. You can see the vagina, in the vagina there is no rugoustes, there is loss of vaginal rugoustes, and small, it is congested, and mucosa is thinned out, and there is punctate like lesions are there, and bleeding on touch. It is readily bleeding on touch because the epithelium is thinned out, it readily bleeds on touch. This is atrophic vaginitis. And so it is the most common cause of postmenopausal bleeding. Around 60% of cases of postmenopausal bleeding, it is due to atrophic vaginitis. Within 4 to 5 years after menopause, 25 to 50% of women, they will present with atrophic vaginitis. So diagnosis of it, this can be made by the symptoms like vaginal dryness, pruritus vulvae, dyspareunia, then thin vaginal discharge. The vaginal discharge will be thin, watery, and bleeding PV. Sometimes they may present with bleeding PV and postcoital bleeding. So the vaginal wall has 4 layers. That is stratified squamous, non-keratinized epithelium, basal layer, smooth muscle layer, and adventitia. In the vaginal cytology, we can see 3 types of cells: parabasal cells, superficial cells, and intermediate cells. So the ratio of these is called as vaginal maturation index. So if you take the vaginal scrapings and the ratio of parabasal, intermediate, and superficial cells, we call it as vaginal maturation index, and it gives the hormonal status of the vaginal walls. So in premenopausal women, that is in reproductive age group, this parabasal, intermediate, and superficial cells, they occur at a ratio of 0, 40, 60. In perimenopausal women, 30, 40, and 30. So out of 100 cells, 30 are parabasal, 40 are intermediate, and 30 are superficial cells. In postmenopausal women, this maturation index is 75, 25, and 0. This is also a very frequently asked question. If the vaginal maturation index is 75, 25, 0, the age of the patient is, like that they can ask. So if the maturation index comes as 75, 25, 0, it states that estrogen is less and it is postmenopausal and it is atrophic vaginitis. So treatment of atrophic vaginitis is local estrogen creams like estradiol vaginal cream, or the pessaries, that is on single dose pessaries or tablets can be kept, and estradiol vaginal rings are also available. That rings will release the estradiol daily. Then coming, what is this condition? This is cervical polyp. Cervix and a pink tongue-like projection is seen at the arising from the cervix. Cervical polyp is the second most common of postmenopausal bleeding. It is a pink tongue-like outgrowth from the cervix. So how can you differentiate it from uterine polyps? You can pass the probe test. You can do probe test. That is, if you pass an uterine sound all around, if it is arising from the cervix, you cannot pass that probe at that, because the pedicle is present there. If it is a uterine polyp, you can pass the uterine sound all around. So by probe test, you can differentiate cervical polyps from the uterine polyps. And these cervical polyps will be pink in color and they will be glistening surface because of mucoid secretion. Whereas uterine polyps will be red fleshy and surface is rough. So atrophic endometritis it is seen after menopause. It is because of hypoestrogenism, and the patient will present with vulval and vaginal itching. On transvaginal sonogram, we will usually see normal or thin. We see thin endometrium, and treatment is topical estrogen cream, and long term we have to use. So other 10% cases of postmenopausal bleeding is due to endometrial hyperplasia. So endometrial hyperplasia and malignancy. By ultrasound, by transvaginal ultrasound, if you see endometrial thickness more than 4 mm, those cases must need endometrial sampling to rule out and histopathological examination to rule out endometrial hyperplasia and malignancy. So measuring endometrial thickness aims to identify those who are more likely to have underlying cancer. Less than 4 mm, chances of cancer is only 0.8%. So SIGN guidelines recommends a thickness of less than 3 mm can be used to exclude, but locally we take 4 mm as the arbitrary line. So this is endometrial carcinoma. It will present as postmenopausal bleeding. Then this is the urethral caruncle. Urethral caruncle, because of chronic inflammation at that site, there may be outgrowth, and patient will present with bleeding PV. So it may be misinterpreted as bleeding per vagina. So sometimes the woman may be having hemorrhoids, fissure in ano, or rectal bleeding because of bowel cancer, and patient may say it is bleeding per vagina. So idiopathic causes. In 10 to 15% of cases, no cause is found. If this bleeding recurs, MRI, cystoscopy, and sigmoidoscopy must be done to identify the early malignant lesions. If source of bleeding is not clear, look for blood in urine and blood in stools. So management of postmenopausal bleeding is very easy. You can write, treat the cause. So when no cause is found, keep her under observation. 80% of the women, they won't bleed again. So if it is only single episode and the endometrial thickness is less than 4 mm, and on ultrasound examination and clinical examination, you have not identified any structural abnormality, 80% of the women won't bleed again. But if the woman has recurrence of bleeding, you have to investigate her. That is, you may need further investigations, histoscopic biopsy, and she may need hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. So this is if she is having any atrophic vaginitis, local estrogen cream or pessaries. Pessaries can be kept, or vaginal estrogen vaginal. So if the woman is having endometrial polyps, that we have to do hysteroscopic polypectomy, or if multiple polyps are there in postmenopausal women, you can advise hysterectomy itself. Okay. So because some polyps may, the histopathology may come as malignancy. So normal transvaginal ultrasound with endometrial thickness of less than 4 mm does not require further investigations provided the bleeding has stopped. Whereas if it is endometrial carcinoma, the endometrial, if it is stage 1, depending upon the staging, you have to treat. Stage 1 means total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. If it is stage 2, lymph node dissection with adjuvant chemo and radiotherapy. So only 2 slides. Any doubts you can express. If atrophic vaginitis has resolved without any treatment, that is, atrophic vaginitis does not resolve without treatment. Unless you give supplement local estrogens, the patient will have that endometrium will be very thinned. You have to give this advice, local estrogen cream for twice daily. The cream has to be applied for 2 weeks. Then only the patient will be relieved of the vaginal dryness, then bleeding per vaginum and all. Okay. So even though you have diagnosed it is atrophic vaginitis, but it has to be evaluated with transvaginal ultrasound for endometrial thickness and other, depending upon the structural lesions on examination. Okay. So what is dysmenorrhea? So 30 more minutes are there. For 10 minutes, I will ask you questions. What is dysmenorrhea? If I have given any homework, it is for the benefit of you only. No? It is for your sake only. I give questions. If it doesn't show interest to reply, then what is the fun in taking classes? Huh? Why you are not submitting the answers? Is it like mass bunking? This is for your purpose only. Otherwise, all questions, whatever I give, you write in one note, separate notes, and instead of internal assessment, we will take that notes as the guide. Okay. So depending upon the answers you write, based on that, we will give internal assessment marks. Is it okay for you? You please submit the answers. Though I may not be able to correct all 200. One or two we can discuss, no, for the benefit of you only. So in the next class, you write about atrophic vaginitis. It is also very frequently repeated 4 marks question. Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll conclude.